Welcome to the Man Amongst Men podcast. Live a life of intentionality, adventure, and brotherhood. Take the inner journey and live out over your edge constantly. Here are your hosts, Dominic and Brian.
What might be possible in your life if you were to design the next decade of your life? If the next decade of your life was going to be the most abundant, fulfilling, meaningful, relationship-rich, adventurous, energizing decade of your life, what would happen? What experiences would you want to have? What relationships would you want to forge or deepen? What relationships would you need to leave behind? What new skills would you need to develop? What habits would you need to implement? What old habits would you need to break? These are really big questions that oftentimes people don't have the space, the time, or the proper guidance to explore at the level of depth they need to in order to create that future that we're talking about. And so that's how a day bleeds into the next. Weeks and months bleed into one another. Years roll off the calendar. We wake up and we look at our lives and we say, what the hell happened? How did I get here? And maybe there are things about your life that you're abundantly appreciative for. But the people that tend to come to us, why you're listening to this podcast, people who come to our retreats where we focus on this stuff, usually are asking deeper questions because there's something about the life that they're living right now that there's a feeling of restlessness, maybe even a little bit of like existential angst around, I know I'm meant to be doing more. I know that my purpose is out there. I can't quite get at it. And what we're talking about here today is in order for you to get really intentional about the next 10 years of your life, step number one is understanding where you've been over the last 10 years.
As you started talking about the most abundant life, the best relationships, the places I'm going, I was like, holy shit, my to-do list just got 10x
right.
what it was before. I had that thought when we've talked for years ago about designing the next 10 years of your life. What I'll say is after going through this exercise with Dominic, doing this in corporations, is that this is an exercise of simplicity. This is an exercise of efficiency. And getting really crystal clear on what that 10-year vision is actually makes the today a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, one of my mentors, Lee Brower, who was featured in the book The Secret, he said something to me, I don't know, he said something to our group maybe 10 years, probably like 8 years ago that really stuck with me. He said, how can you make meaningful decisions in this moment if you don't know where you're going, right? And he's like, most of us, if you look at your horizon, is it clear? Is it staticky? Is your horizon dynamic, or is it just the same, more of the same? And I write about this in my book, Design Your Future. I'm like, the thing that feels the worst to someone like us and to our listeners is living into a future of more of the same. Like we want growth, we want development. And I know you're a big fan of the Bill Gates quote, right?
Yeah, like, Bill Gates, right? So he says this guy knows a lot, has put together Microsoft, if you don't know who Bill Gates is. But one of his more famous quotes is that people often overestimate what they can do in a 1-year period.
Yes.
And vastly underestimate what they can do in 10 years.
Right.
And so it makes me wonder, like, well, what is it? Because these years, they tend to go by one by one by one by one. But when we look at that 10-year horizon, like, wow. And I see this when I run this exercise at corporations, the aha or the wow moment that I hear from people is like, oh, interesting. Like, I've been just floating through life, attacking the challenges as they come to me and growing incrementally.
Right.
One problem, one issue at a time, but just as they come at me is the key phraseology. I'm not sure if that's a word.
Phraseology is approved as a word.
Great. For this podcast, it is officially a word.
Purposes of this podcast.
Great. So they see the challenges coming at them, they tackle them one at a time, and then even 10 years later, they're like, oh, I accomplished some stuff. And that's great.
No question.
That's part of the exercise that we're going to go through today. But they're not where necessarily they want to be. They weren't designing with intention.
That's the key. That's the key is you can accomplish a hell of a lot. And actually, we're going to be leading into a meditation that gets you really clear on how much can actually unfold over a 10-year period, because we're going to be looking back at your life over the last 10 years and unpack how many experiences you've had to show you how much can go down in 10 years. And also to highlight how some things don't change at all over that period of time when you do not bring intentionality, right? Things that like you're tired of now that you're no longer willing to accept, but you're like, holy shit, I've made no progress in those areas of my life. So it's equally important to see how much has happened, how also little has happened over that period of time. This is the centerpiece of some of the retreats that we run for men, right? So the last retreat that we ran in Colorado, we brought a group of guys up into the Rockies and rented this amazing house on, I don't know how many acres we had, like 60 acres of private property.
There's a million. There are a million acres. It felt like there's a million acres. On a mountain. Yeah.
On a mountain. And the first thing that we like, the way that we end the first evening is doing this guided meditation around the last 10 years of your life. Like, where have you been? I'm about to run a women's retreat here in New York City in October for high-performing women in male-dominated environments, VP, senior VP level. And this is also the focus, which is like designing the next decade. And I've already had conversations with a dozen women who are coming to this retreat. And these are the most accomplished women in the business, right? VP, senior VP, they're held out as models for like who you would want to become across all of these Fortune 1000 companies. Each of them, to some degree, has this deeper feeling of, I know I've accomplished a lot, but there's something else out there that I haven't really got at. And to a person, none of them have said, all of them have said, I've never really set a horizon 10 years out. Now, the thing that's important for me personally about a 10-year horizon, man, is I'm coming up on my 10th year of inner work, right? So like when I was 30 years old, like at the back end of 30 was when I really first started jumping into this work. And it was because I hit my low point. And my good friend Grace Gold like pointed me into the right direction, introduced me to The Way of the Superior Man, that book, and also The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, and then also Landmark Forum, which is my very first personal development program. She created a monster, dude. Like my whole life changed. And this was the only decade of my life that I lived intentionally. But I look back on my last 10 years and it's just like a lifetime of experiences inside of a 10-year period. And
it's a paradox, right? There is a paradox when it comes to the time and what time feels like when we're intentional and we have a vision for our lives. I look at my last 10 years. I've been doing this inner work for the last 3. So when I look at the last 10 years of my life, I feel like the previous 7 went by in a flash.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that didn't mean I didn't have big moments. I did have big moments, but I can't place them in my mind and attach the meaning to them. I look at the last 3 years of my life that I've been doing this work. It feels slow. It feels rich. I can identify multiple life-changing events.
Right.
Even if a life-changing event is a belief that's changed, a new lesson, I can feel it. And so there's a paradox where like planning out this 10 years actually makes life feel like it's going slower and more rich, not just go by faster because you're doing more.
Right on. And the thing that blurs shit together is sameness. It's sameness. Like it's like when you make the donuts all the time, it's the same thing. There's no contrast. There's no high, no low. There's no standout moments. So what stands out over the course of your life? Like, and I'll ask some of these things in the meditation, but things like your firsts stand out, right? If you're going to go back, not just the 10 years, but like, let's go back over your lifetime. Like everyone remembers their first kiss. Right? You may remember.
I thought you were going somewhere different than that, but first kiss, yes, that's a good one.
First kiss, right? Mm-hmm. First car you ever drove, right?
First pizza. I don't remember my first pizza.
I actually kind of do remember my first pizza. Sal's Pizza, Main Street, Ramsey, New Jersey.
It's the first pizza that you remember. It can't possibly be the first pizza you ever had.
Fair enough. The real shit though, it's like you can remember your first concert that you went to. Beach Boys for me. Do you remember your first concert?
Garth Brooks.
Garth Brooks?
Yes.
Wow.
Country
okay.
through and through.
Yeah. So like these are the firsts that stand out. You also remember your first heartbreak. You also remember your first time getting dumped.
I remember my first awkward dance in probably about 3rd or 4th grade, where the guys were on one side of the room, the girls were on the other side of the room.
You're so trained to never say girls.
So trained.
The 4th grade women on the other side of the room.
The mirror ball downstairs in the basement of the grade school. Yeah. I remember these are intense moments.
But then there are these other moments like I remember the Challenger, what do you call it, rocket ship exploding. I remember 9/11, where we were for that. I remember when Mark McGwire broke the home run record. Like I remember these moments that stand out, right? And we could keep going on and on and on. But what ends up happening with your life, if you want a rich life with memories and novelty and adventure, then a lot of that needs to come through intentional design. Or you can just continue the way that you've been living and just allow life to serve up whatever it's going to serve up. And it'll do that anyway. It will do that anyway, but it'd be pretty cool for you to step in and author a few of those experiences.
And this gives us the meditation that Dom's going to take us through gives us an opportunity to slow down and reflect. And something we'll be talking about more and more on this podcast is like how we grow as individuals. And there's really three ways. There's reflection, which we're going to be doing hardcore here.
Yeah.
There's getting feedback from others, getting an outside perspective, or then using tools like a personality assessment or some sort of tool that provides some level of insight. So this here is number one. We get a chance to reflect and really look back.
Yeah. And here's the thing that I want to let everyone off the hook for is when people think about like a 10-year horizon, they're like, holy shit, like I can't even conceive of that. And am I supposed to have like every year mapped out? Do I need like a game plan for all of it and how I get from A to B, and B is like a Mount Everest? And the answer is quite simple. It's no. It's no. Really, like when we'll get to the future 10 years, because this conversation is really about looking backwards, but maybe just to set this up a little bit, the 10 years is more about how you want to feel and who you want to be and how you want to live versus the specifics of, right? Because like the great joke that we all kind of forget about often, and I forget this often, I have to remind myself, is that the only reason why we do anything is because we're chasing some sort of feeling or we're trying to get away from some sort of feeling, right?
Yeah,
it's
the emotion is the access point.
Yes.
To the moment, to the memory.
Yes. So for example, like our good buddy Mark, who's in our men's group, right? He ran me through this exercise recently. He was like, okay, when Dominic was 30 years old, 10 years ago, he was like, what did Dominic of 30 years ago believe would make him happy? Okay, so I was chasing a feeling of happy. Like most people, we all are, right? We want to be happy. We want to feel accomplished. We want to be peaceful. What I thought would make me happy back then was making $1 million, was having huge opportunities at work, being seen as a leader. I wanted to be adored by women and have like my choice. I wanted to have access to all the top-notch social circles in New York City. I wanted to be important, right? I wanted to have a great apartment. I wanted to be able to take great vacations. Like those were the things that were the most important to me. And I still like a lot of those things, but I had a lot of those things when I was 30 and I wasn't happy. And so like, that's where I ended up getting confused. I was like, wait a minute, those were the things. In my life, I was always chasing things. I was always chasing accomplishments versus really like tapping into what the feelings were I wanted to experience. And the feelings then drive the actions, the behaviors, the businesses you build, the relationships you pursue. And I think most people lose sight of that, don't even recognize that.
I want to get into this exercise. And if you've seen Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Wild Stallions.
Wild Stallions.
By the way, I drove through San Dimas about a couple months ago, which is where the high school was like located. Huh. San Dimas High School football rules. And I drove through San Dimas. I had lunch, and I sent messages to all my friends saying, San Dimas High School football rules. No one understood what I meant.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're under the age of probably 32, you probably do have no clue.
Or over the age of 41, it's like there was really only a window.
The window wasn't that big. Yeah. All right. So the question that we get often is, well, what do I do if I've woken up all of a sudden? I'm like, how did I get here? The first is just recognizing something that you've been in drift.
Yeah.
And if you don't recognize when I say the word drift, we have a whole podcast. It's one of our more popular podcasts on drift and what it is. But the short version is it is the hypnotic rhythm we get into in life where we're just doing activities based on old programming that happen over and over and over again. Then all of a sudden we wake up and we wonder, how did we get here?
Yeah.
And so part of this exercise is really a step one in identifying those areas in our past where we had some sort of emotion attached to an action or attached to something that happened, and what we can do after. I won't get too much into it right now because we'll talk about it after the meditation. But we can start to look at our past and start to look at some of our patterns. And by seeing those patterns, we can start to break ourselves from drift and design something that we actually want to live into.
Yeah, hell yeah. I couldn't recommend listening to that podcast. I think it's our first or second podcast on your number one enemy to living a powerful life, and that's drift. And then I've written an entire book on it, which is called Design Your Future. And the enemy in there is drift. And there's 3 steps on how to break free from that. And if you want to go even deeper, Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil, who is the one who coined the term drift. Get that book. It's the number one book of my life.
Before Dominic leads us into this meditation, please make sure you're in a safe place to do this. If you're driving a car or need to be paying attention to something, this is not the time to do this meditation. Find a place that's relaxing where you can let go. Here's Dominic.
Welcome to the journey of exploring the last 10 years of your life. Wherever you are right now, I invite you to settle in to a place that is most comfortable for you. Whether that's sitting down or lying down or whatever feels good for you, just allow that. And if you haven't already, I'll invite you to close your eyes, disconnect just temporarily from the outside world, drop into this moment, and connect inward with yourself. It's funny how little it takes. A simple act of just closing your eyes, shutting down to the sensory inputs of the outside world, which allows you to become more aware of what's going on inside of you, any feelings that you may have, places in your body where you may feel particularly comfortable, other places that may be holding tension, allowing that to relax and to settle in. And whatever's going on in the mind in this moment or in future moments, allowing that as well. The mind's job is to produce thoughts. And at any time during this guided meditation, when you've drifted, you can always bring yourself back to the sound of my voice. I'd like to offer you this opportunity to deepen your breathing, to take a deep breath in through the nose and twice as long of an exhale out the mouth. You can do this at your own pace, or you can follow along with me for the next few breaths. Continuing on with that cadence at your own pace, recognizing that by allowing yourself twice as long of an exhale, that you are activating your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest, the stress reduction, the relaxation system. And isn't it nice to know that something as simple as closing your eyes, deepening your breathing, slowing your exhale, not only can bring you further into the present moment, but can also bring online both your conscious and unconscious mind. Perhaps you're already aware that both of those minds are activated and at your disposal right now. The unconscious mind is where your deeper wisdom lies. memories, experiences, intuition. And you're going to have access to both your thinking and your unconscious thinking mind throughout this entire journey. Are you ready to begin? It's time to step inside your very own personal time machine. What does yours look like? Take a moment to acquaint yourself with your very own personal time machine that provides you access to travel all along the spectrum of your life, granting you access to the parts of your journey that you desire to go. Now set that baby back 10 years from today. And let's begin. Here you are now, 10 years ago. How old are you in this 10 years ago version of you? Can you witness this 10 years ago version of you as if that part of your life is being projected out on a movie screen, witnessing from a third-party perspective? How old are you? Where is that version of you living? What city? What state? What home or apartment or wherever it was that you were 10 years ago? What does that place look like? Can you recall some of the nuances of that place? How you felt about it? Was there anyone else living with you at the time? And if so, who? And what did they look like then? What job did you have at that time, if any at all? If you had a job, what was your title? What were you doing? Diving even deeper, how did you feel at the time? How did you feel physically? Looking at this version of you on the movie screen, how much did you weigh? What clothes were you wearing? What haircut? Do you look tired or energized? What was your health like? What was your diet like? How are you feeling mentally? Does this 10 years ago version of you look focused, determined, scattered, frustrated, directionless? How was this version of you feeling emotionally? Optimistic? Lost? Ready to take on the world? Full of life? Resentful? Angry? Blissful? What emotions did you feel at that time? How were you feeling spiritually? In whatever way you define that word. Was there a spiritual connection? Was there resistance? What did you believe in or not that 10 years ago version of you? Was there something bigger and greater than you? Or were you the biggest thing in your life at that time? What was your financial situation 10 years ago? How much money were you making? What did you have saved, if anything at all? What were your feelings towards money? Were you optimistic? Were you scared? Were you earning? Was there never enough? What were your beliefs about money 10 years ago? Looking at the relationships in your life, who were the closest people in your life 10 years ago? Who played the biggest roles? Whether good or bad or anything in between. Who was there most centrally in your life? And expanding further, who else was there maybe not so centrally, but appear to you now? And then finally, what did you believe would make you happy? Looking at this version of you from 10 years ago on the movie screen, not aware that they're being observed by the present day version of you. What did that version of you believe would make you happy? Was it love? Was it success? Was it money in the bank account? Was it material possessions or becoming a parent? Climbing financially, socially, career-wise? What did you believe would make you happy? And now comes the really exciting part. Your time machine has this wonderful ability to take you anywhere you want to go over the last 10 years. It can take you chronologically forward, day by day, month by month, year by year. Or you can float around, dropping in and out of any time period over the last 10 years that stands out to you. Looking for those experiences that may stand out, like beginnings, like endings, changes in jobs, locations, relationship statuses, births, deaths, high points, low points, times of transition. You may be aware that some of these moments are effortlessly floating to you right now. Recognizing that they could be coming to you in a variety of ways. Visual images, still images, moving images, sounds. voices, smells even. Maintaining an openness and awareness to all of these experiences showing up in a variety of ways. Who has come into your life? Who has left? What have been your lowest moments? What have been your greatest successes? Where have you felt most alive? Where have you felt most lost? You'll have the next minute without interruption from my voice to search and also to sit back and allow some of those prominent moments from the past and also some of those more subtle moments that may not stand out immediately, but had a profound effect on who you've become today. And when that minute is up, stay in this as I'll guide you to the next step. Remaining exactly where you are, doing one final last sweep of the last 10 years for anything else that may want to surface. And also sending that request to your unconscious mind to ask for anything you may have forgotten, to give it permission to reveal itself at a later date and time, as memories and insights and awarenesses often want to do. And taking all of what you've gathered up over the course of this exploration, with the awareness that you can always come back and do more, bringing that with you in the time machine as you ready yourself to come back into this present moment, saying goodbye to the 10 years ago version of you, hopping in that time machine with all of this new wisdom and insight, and arriving back here in the present moment of now. And in these final few moments, you'll be best served to recognize and appreciate how much can happen over the course of a 10-year period of your life, even without intentionally trying. Life is rich. Experiences unfold. And it's also amazing how in some areas of our lives, how little has changed. And how that may be a beautiful thing in some cases, and how that may be something that you no longer are willing to stand for in others. Whatever you've taken from the inventory of your last 10 years, it is now at your disposal for how you want to intentionally design your next 10 years. Starting with a deep breath in and out through the mouth. Again. One more. Bringing awareness to your body and the space around you. Recognizing any sounds or feelings. Wiggling your fingers and toes. Maybe giving your shoulders a roll, allowing your head gently to rock from side to side. And whenever you're ready, allowing your eyes to float back open. Ready to design the next 10 years of your life.
Wow. What a journey we have all been on. Was any of that overwhelming for you? I know it was for me. I just got done doing the same meditation that Dominic took you through. When I look at my last 10 years, I was about 30 pounds lighter, and my hair was a lot shorter. But there were so many memories that came flooding in, so many visualizations, and so many conversations and relationships. And the visual of looking at me on a movie screen really resonated with me. And now that you've gone through this experience, we have an opportunity. All of these memories that are now in our consciousness that have been brought back up. Moments that we haven't thought about in years. We can do something with them. What I encourage you to do is to take out a blank piece of paper and just start to inventory those moments, using only maybe 3 to 7 words that describes each moment for you. And then next to those moments, put either a 1, a 2, or a 3. And those numbers just simply represent what you were feeling like at that time. And 3, let's just call that above average. Let's call 2 average and 1 below average. So inventory all of the moments that you collected in that meditation. Write them all down on a piece of paper. Now, why? Why are we doing this? Well, as we start to recognize what came to us in our unconscious, we can start to recognize patterns. We can start to see what's important to us, what our minds remember. And when we start to recognize those patterns, we can then ask ourselves 2 very important questions. And the first question is, what do you want to let go of? What is it in the last 10 years that either happened to you or that you believed about yourself maybe that you want to let go of? What do you want to leave behind in the last 10 years? What is no longer serving you? So as you continue to inventory that list on that blank piece of paper and putting the 1s, 2s, and 3s based on your feeling emotionally, you can ask yourself the second important question of this. What in the last 10 years are you thankful for? If you were to go back into your time machine and go see a previous version of yourself, what would you thank them for? What is and has served you? What do you want to continue doing that is the core of you, the real part of you, that's going to make the next 10 years of your life better? So what do you want to carry forward? And if you want to do the really advanced version, visualization of this exercise, you can now take all those moments that you have that are in no particular time or order and put them on a timeline. What happened 10 years ago? 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, even more recently than that, even in the past couple weeks. And you can now look at those numbers that you added, the 1s, the 2s, and the 3s, and you can draw a line on your piece of paper, on your timeline that isn't just flat, but goes up and down with those numbers. And we can start to see the patterns even more clearly. And when I look at my sheet, I see how all those low moments tended to give a rise quickly to new and exciting moments. And understanding even that simple pattern can give us insight into how we can design the next 10 years of our life, and even what we're dealing with in this moment, whether we're at a high or we at a low, or we somewhere in between. Take that piece of paper, reflect on it. What do you want to leave behind? What do you want to take forward? And in a future version of this podcast, we'll talk more specifically about how do we intentionally design the next 10 years of our life? What is the journey we want to go on?
Hey, thanks for listening to the Man Amongst Men podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you want more access to tools and resources, and you want information on our upcoming live events and retreats, head on over to www.doinnerwork.com.